Now, let me introduce you all to the resource speaker for today. Madam Geetha Gopi and is a rehabilitation practitioner and a psychologist. She's the directors of program at Shah Shaktikaran Trust, Kochi, with over 30 years of experience in helping children with special needs. She's worked in international schools following an American curriculum for inclusive settings for primarily more than 15 years. She's done intensive work in curriculum development, adaptation, behavioral management, coordination, and promoting best educational practices using UDL principles among staff and teachers and parents. She was also launched Early Academic Series, a teacher's kit for teaching early English language skills and basic math skills based on the universal design of learning. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, ma'am. And I'm sure we'll learn a lot of techniques on how to build attention and perceptual skills of children with special needs. Before I hand over the podium to you, I'd like to inform all the members the current session would be for 2 hours. The session would begin with a presentation by the resource speaker, followed by a Q&A segment. During the presentation, the chat would be switched to host and panelist mode for us to focus on the speaker sharing. Wish you all a happy learning. Geetha ma'am, do I have you here with me? Yes. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, and good evening to all the participants, and thank you, Ability, for this platform once again. So it's a great pleasure being back. We have started on the new module. I think I'm possibly is the first workshop in the third module. So without much ado, let me start sharing the screen so we can get into the workshop straight away. So today's workshop, it's about developing cognitive skills. There are two parts to this module, to this particular topic. And I'm dealing with the part one of the development of cognitive skills, which deals with attention and perceptual skills in children with special needs. Just to do
Ma'am, do you want to stop
I'm just
sharing?
having a bit of trouble with my
yes. Ma'am, do you want to stop sharing and reshare maybe the screen again?
Yeah, now it
works. Yeah.
Okay. So going through a quick recap of what you may have already gone through. We've had an insight into different kinds of academic challenges that children with special needs face. Assessment of children, like using screening tools to identify children at risk and those who are at risk for having academic difficulties. Different kinds of informal assessment tools. How to determine the literacy and numeracy skill challenges that are commonly seen in children with special needs. So all these you might have already had a background of. So today we are going to get more into an overview of remediation skills. And to start with, we have delved into cognitive skills. So today's overview on today's workshop would be what are cognitive skills and what are the different areas in which cognitive skills develop. And then what are the challenges children with special needs face with regard to cognitive skills. And then strategies and activities which facilitate cognitive skill development and how it impacts learning in schools and in academic performances. So to get into what is cognitive skill development, it refers to the progressive building of skills which are required for any kind of learning, such as attention, perception, thinking, memory, etc. And all these skills, it goes without saying that these enable anybody, all of us, including children, to process the information that we get from the world around us, derive meaning out of it, and to act upon it. So cognitive skills are very crucial in any kind of learning process. And what it does to a child or a person is, it not only helps them to learn about the world, it helps them to evaluate, to critically analyze things that they've seen, heard, felt, to remember these things over time, so that when they need it, they can actually retrieve it and apply it into situations as necessary. Allows them to choose, make informed choices, like make be compare the pros and cons of different things, compare and contrasting skills, understand cause and effect mechanisms, like if something happens, then what follows, what is the effect of that happening. So from all these, children or people learn continuously. It's a continuous process. It's a never ending process in life. So cognitive skills develop throughout life, because every single day, every single new experience that we get, every single new piece of information that we access, all this adds on to our learning, and the wide storage, which we call memory. So all these finally further refine our learning processes that take place afterwards. So all previous learning is a stepping stone to new learning. And that is why the cognitive skills continue to develop throughout, although the biggest spurt of development is in the early stages. But as we continue to learn and grow and enrich ourselves from everything around us, learning becomes a lifelong process, and therefore cognitive skill processing is also a lifelong process. Some of the cognitive skills, skill development does happen, it is not within our reach. That is, it is more like genetic. It may be acquired over time. It may be in the genetic disposition that we come with when we are born. But a lot of the cognitive skills are actually learned from the environment. So the good thing about it is, even if genetically there are certain risks or there are certain cognitive processing issues, still there is a lot that can be done in the environment, changes that can be made, or activities or things that can be planned in the environment, which can help the learning of certain cognitive skills. So which gives credence to the idea that most of the cognitive skills can be not only just learned, but also refined and improved with practice and the right kind of training. So it is like all of us. I mean, even if a person like us, if we've led a very sedentary lifestyle, but if we decide that, okay, we need to take care of physical health a little bit more, and then we start doing, say, aerobics or yoga or some kind of physical exercise training, and then your whole body transforms accordingly. So you learn with practice and with the right kind of training, you retrain the way your body responds to the kind of food or the kind of activities that you do, the stamina you develop, and so on. So it is the same with cognitive skills as well. Therefore, they can be, it can be, learning environments can be created in such a fashion that cognitive skill development takes place, and a lot of repetition and practice can be given, so that they are firmly reinforced in the child. So what are some of these cognitive skills that we're talking about? Cognitive skills develop over time and are derived from sensory motor development, which happens in early childhood, right from birth onwards, especially the first 1.5 to say 3 years of development. Most of the sensory motor skills develop at a very fast rate during this time. And cognitive skills develop alongside it and as an offshoot of sensory motor development. Usually, sensory motor development forms the basis of all other skill developments. And it's the same with cognitive skill development as well. However, these are not totally dependent on sensory motor alone. There are other factors also that come into it, but this lays the good foundation. What cognitive skills do is, when there are sensory motor skill development takes place, that happens more as a physical part of growth, right? Physical part of maturation and development of the body and the different parts of the body. what cognitive skills do is it gives a new sense of direction, a new sense of meaning and purpose to those sensory motor skills. So if I give an example, reaching out for objects, uh, it's a part of sensory motor development. A baby, after a few, once a baby is 2 months to 3 months and so on, when they see certain objects which catches their attention, they try to reach for it. So what happens is here, the sensory motor skill is reaching for the object. However, the cognitive skill that develops based on that is once they start reaching for objects, they learn exploratory skills. They start grasping those things. Once they've grasped it, they feel it. Usually children put things in their mouth. So they learn a lot about that object that they've grasped, which later on tells them how they can manipulate those objects. For example, if it's a rattle, they realize that putting it into the mouth, they cannot force it down the mouth. Especially rattles are slightly bigger than what can go into their mouth. They learn that objects can be hard, some objects can be soft. So a lot of things are intuitively learned because of sensory motor development and concurrent cognitive skill development that adds on to a child's repertoire of skills. And cognitive skills, what they do is to take the sensory and motor development skills to a higher level of function. So what was just a grasp of an object or feeling an object, later on gains more meaning. The child begins to understand, look for bright colors, or usually you find children, going for more bright colored objects and probably discarding, lesser, more pale colored objects. Sometimes you find they go for certain texture of toys. Some of them, they would like toys which produce sound. So something that can be shaken and can be, sound producing, or they can bang these toys and produce sound. So many of these, the characteristics of the objects, is perceived by the child. So it takes what was a sensory motor skill to a much higher level order of functioning. And that is the role of cognitive skills. Cognitive skills, in short, in a nutshell, if you ask what are cognitive skills, it constitutes and it also contributes to a child's intellectual development, what we popularly call as intelligence, being able to understand, being able to analyze, being able to, remember and reproduce what they have understood, or being able to, from a previous knowledge, being able to devise or find solutions to newer problems. So all this form part of cognitive skill development and contributes to the overall general intellectual functioning. And the core of the cognitive skill performance depends on how fluent you are in these cognitive skill processing. Fluency means speed and accuracy. How quickly can you understand these things and reproduce these things, or recall, or act upon these, and how accurately are you doing it? How well are you perceiving it? How well are you attending to something? How well are you able to learn something, reproduce it, and apply it in your daily life? So all these form part of cognitive skills, and it forms a whole gamut of being more adapted in your environment. So when you look at some of the cognitive skills more at the basic level, what are these cognitive skills meant to do? How do they help us go through life? They help us to, first and foremost, we are hit by a lot of sensory stimuli in our environment. We take in a lot, we see a lot of things, we hear, we feel, we touch. So all the sensory modalities are bombarding us with a lot of stimuli and a lot of information from our environment. So being able to attend to these information, being able to concentrate means to attend for a certain length of time on the different kinds of information that is coming our way, so that we can assimilate, we can take in this information, we can understand what is happening in the environment around us. We can kind of make judgments about it, or create our own idea about these happenings in our world. So all this depends on, attention and concentration, on being able to sustain attention for a certain duration of time, helping us to determine directionality, looking towards the source of the sound or the source of the visual imagery that is produced, being able to understand, where to look for objects, or how to look for objects, etc. All this form part of, cognitive skill training. Recognizing patterns. Patterns are something that happens in a repetitive fashion, in a cyclic fashion. So something like, if as simple as after morning, it becomes afternoon, and then it goes to night, and then it comes back to morning. The day progresses through this. So being able to recognize these kind of repetitive cyclic patterns, which are so prevalent in most things in nature. It is also very prevalent in a lot of academic skills, number systems, letter systems, word patterns, and so on. So being able to recognize patterns, this is also part of, a kind of cognitive skill thing. And be able to engage in, critical thinking, logical thinking. If you see something, understand a certain sequence, why it is happening, or if you understand the whys and the hows of something, then, you have greater control over if you want to change the effects. So you can, understand something in order to change the patterns, or change the thinking sequence, or to change the sequence of events to suit a particular goal. So all these things are helped because of cognitive skill development. It also helps us to understand and evaluate certain problems that we face in life. It could be problems related to academics. It could be any problems related to life. So to be able to understand the situation, evaluate it, and analyze it, if there is a problem there, how to find a solution, or how to find possible different solutions, and then choose the best possible solution. All this can be attributed to cognitive skills and development of cognitive skills. So basically, trying to make sense of all the sensory stimuli that we see, derive meaning out of it, assimilate it, store it in our, in our intellectual system, the brain, and different the neural system, and then be able to retrieve it and apply it as and when necessary. Is a great part of the cognitive skill development. At a higher level, if you get into the schooling, or the formal learning environment, the academic learning environment, cognitive skills are the ones that help us to listen to directions, understand those directions, and then follow upon those directions. Or if you're solving say a math problem, a word problem, being able to read the word problem and analyze it, decide upon the plan of action to do, and then act upon, execute those plan of action in order to solve that problem. So it helps us to to understand, evaluate, plan, strategize. It helps us to rely on our past experience and then solve, find newer solutions to old problems. So sometimes, if you find, you might have seen children, if they've touched something hot, they would have quickly removed their hand, more of a reflex action. But because they have learned something cognitively from that, the next time they see something hot, they see steam coming out of something, or if people say it is hot, they will be more wary and will not go and touch it. So all this has come from the past experience of having their fingers burnt. So this kind of past experience leads to, better adaptability in their environment. If you want to change situations based on your past experience, based on your previous knowledge, you can read up on newer knowledge, assimilating more new information so that you can change the outcomes, you can change the process, you can change the way you approach problems. So all these form part of higher cognitive skill training. Making more informed, more intelligent decisions. I mean, Say, for example, if you look at your own life, if you are in your early 20s and there was a certain problem presented to you, you would have solved it in a certain fashion. But say when you move further down life, when you get into 40 years or 50 years, the rich, vast experience and the learnings from those experiences of all those years of life that you've had, probably when faced with the same kind of problem, you will arrive at better solutions, or you will plan and strategize on solutions which will give you much better outcomes. So all this, it builds upon one another, and it is constantly being refined and improved and enhanced through the different kinds of experiences that we come across day in and day out in our life. So again, all these things totally converge as cognitive skills. And then if we talk about cognitive skills, I've just talked, just touched upon, how in daily life situations these are important, and also in academics, how these are important. But since we're dealing with children with special needs, and we're talking about inclusion and inclusive learning environments, obviously we have to talk about, how does it manifest in acquisition of academic skills when it comes to children. So challenges in cognitive development can affect the thoughts processes in children, and which in fact can affect their learning and therefore affect their output or their academic performance. And what are some of the ways it manifests in or it affects either positively or negatively in academic development? One of the skills required for in schools is paying attention to important facts. So if you read something up, or if you're listening to a teacher explaining something, being able to pay attention to the facts that they're giving out, to the information that they're giving out, listening very accurately and being able to follow the directions, especially if there are multi-step directions given. So being able to attend to, listen, process that information, and then carry out the instructions that are being given. Remembering those instructions, or what is being taught, or what is being, not just attending to it, processing it, and, being able to do it in the immediate thing, but being able to store it, remember it over time. And that also is very important. Visualizing vocabulary words. For example, when you're presented sight words, when whole word approaches are given in reading, when flashcards are provided with reading words, being able to visualize the word as the shape of the word, the length of the word, maybe the beginning sound, and the beginning letter and the ending letter sounds, and so on. So being able to visualize these words more in the realm of imagination, on based on how they've seen it in the flashcards or seen it being presented in books. It helps in reading fluency and comprehension. Again, because all these things, whether it is attention, whether it is perception, that is deriving meaning out of what they have, the stimulus that they have been exposed to, and then storing it as in memory. All these are required for things like recognizing words, that improving your reading fluency, comprehension, that is understanding what you have been reading. So when it comes to the core academics, that is reading comprehension or writing or doing math, definitely all these cognitive processes have an immense impact. Whether it is, whether you have to visualize a story or write about a composition, you're given an unknown topic, and based on the topic, you have to write a few sentences, compose a few sentences. Here again, a lot of your past lived experiences, how you have perceived it, how you remember those experiences, how you can translate and transform those lived experiences into word format and compose, write a composition. All this is, is part of the underlying processes that are there in reading, writing, math, etc., are cognitive skill processes. Same thing when it comes to, when you write or read or you're trying to create something, do a project in school, how you conceive or think about new ideas, how do you bring about your creativity into it. Creativity is what? It is usually based on your past experiences, then you get a new spark and you try to expand upon the previous knowledge you've had about something, and you pay more a lot of observational attention to that particular topic. You read upon it, gather more information, and then that is how creativity kind of develops. So thinking of new ideas and becoming more original in your thought process. All this are, important cognitive skill processes which help in academic output or academic performance. Remembering steps and procedures while recording, and remembering steps in a certain sequential order. For example, if you have to retell a story or summarize a story that you've read, or if you have to do a certain mathematical procedure, say you're doing 2-digit addition with carryover or regrouping, there is a certain certain sequence to the steps. What is step number 1, what is step number 2, so that following that, being able to recall those steps in sequence and be able to present it. Making plans, such as constructing models, if you're doing a science project or if you're doing art and craft project, being able to visualize and imagine that in your mind and then putting it through action. All this requires cognitive skill, perceptual skills and attention, recall, and all that. Problem solving, when you're, again, if you already have a set of facts or data with you, using that data to find solutions. So, basically using information collected over time to find solutions. It could be as simple as, growing a plant project. You're growing a plant, potted plant, and then probably as a part of experiment, you might have put some plants in the sun with water, enough water, another set of plants with no sunlight but only water, another one with no water and no sunlight. And then you use these facts that you gather from the 3 experiments to find solutions to, how better can you grow plants, what are the things necessary. You infer a lot of information on how to grow the best, what is the best way of growing plants and so on. So problem solving, basically using known facts and use that to base your use the known facts, base your critical thinking on that, and find solutions to problems. Finishing or completing academic works or tests or exams in the set time limit, that is being able to do it within a certain time duration. So that requires a certain amount of fluency. Again, as I said, fluency means there should be a certain level of speed as well as accuracy. Both should go hand in hand if you're trying to remember, process, and apply the information. And especially when you're reproducing it in evaluation or in academic work, or in in more formatted evaluative assessments such as tests and exams. So being able to do all this requires considerable amount of cognitive skill proficiency. And there's plenty of research which says that cognitive skill development is actually crucial for holistic growth, because to all the skill developments that take place, sensory motor, social skill development, speech and language development, for all this, the crown, so to say, which gives a higher order, a higher order efficacy and higher order sophistication to all these skill development is cognitive development. And therefore, it is very crucial for a more wholesome, holistic kind of growth in anybody, and particularly so in children. And a research study conducted recently in 2019 by Ranjitkar et al., it reveals that it is crucial for attaining the complete developmental potential among children, and particularly so in the early years. Every child is born with a lot of potential. So if you have to attain the maximum potential of that developmental, especially in the developmental growing years, then cognitive development is very crucial. And therefore, working on these skills is also crucial. A lot of factors also play into cognitive skill development. We did talk about the genetic factor, but there's also a considerable environmental factor. So when we talk about environmental factors, there are also socioeconomical factors, the kind of stimulation that the child receives, whether at home or at school, if they are coming from deprived or socially or economically disadvantaged backgrounds. All these do form a crucial role in the cognitive development of children. And when we because all these form a very impactful impact, has a great impact in a child development. um, the right kind of stimulation, the right kind of learning environment, etc., is very crucial for holistic growth, as well as to top it up with cognitive development. And early intervention. When we talk about children who have disorders or special needs issues, definitely early intervention is the key to helping them achieve their fullest potential. And when it comes to early intervention, a considerable amount of stress and thought should be given to including cognitive level tasks in addition to all the other skill domain areas that you're targeting for intervention. So the key areas where we have to key areas where cognitive development takes place is: one is attention. And what is attention? It is the ability of people to actively process certain specific kind of information which is in the environment while tuning out the other details. To give an example, for example, if you're driving on the road, there's a considerable amount of distraction on the road. There are a lot of other vehicles. There are traffic signals to follow, road signs. There's plenty of people, pedestrians, shopping areas, shops and buildings and such things. So there's plenty of visual and auditory stimuli that you're bombarded with when you're driving. But what we do when we drive is, or what we should do when we drive is, we shut out all the unnecessary information for that particular job that we're doing, that is driving, and focus on the road or the road signs or the traffic signals, checking the mirrors while you're driving, if you're driving in a car. So all this is what we are focusing on. While shutting out the unnecessary or the stimuli that are irrelevant to that particular task you have at hand, and that is what is called attention. And when you do attention over a certain amount of time, that's called concentration or sustained attention. And then there is perception. Perception is when you're getting all the sensory stimuli, trying to make sense of it, trying to interpret it. For example, if you see an apple, now apple is a common fruit, most of us know it, but suppose you are seeing a fruit which you are not from some other part of the world, you've not been exposed to it much, you're seeing a new kind of fruit. So what you do is, you probably touch it, you probably look at the color, the shape, the texture, probably you'll cut it and try and taste it. So you try to make sense of what this fruit is, and you try to bring about your own interpretation, whether you like it or whether it is similar to another fruit you've eaten, or is it very much in contrast to some of the fruits you've eaten, or does this particular fruit have a very something unique about it? So it is the process. Basically, perception means you're forming a certain idea or an image about the sensory stimuli you've learned. So you are trying to make sense and interpret it in a certain way. And interpretation can happen at very, very different levels. It starts off at a very concrete level and it proceeds to more, abstract levels. Just to take the example of the fruit. For example, if I'm talking of an apple, at a very concrete level, okay, apple is round, almost round. It is mostly red in color. It has a certain texture to it. You understand it is something to be eaten. But as your perception about, you gain more and more knowledge with experience about apples, Then you start learning that apples can not just, it's not just a fruit that can be cut up and eaten. It can be, you can make different recipes out of it. You can even make something very different like apple cider vinegar from what you see as an apple. So your perception about the apple has changed because of all the vast amount of information you have assimilated, and your sense of what is an apple, your interpretation of what is an apple has been refined and added on and become more sophisticated with time. So this is what perception is. It starts off at a very basic level and it keeps adding on. Memory is again, after you attend and you perceive information, repeat when you, with more experiences and with practice and with repetition of similar kind of stimuli, it gets stored in the brain. So it gets stored for either immediate use or use after a short term or use in the long term. So that is what is memory. Memory is basically a storage mechanism of all that you're assimilated through your attention and your perceptual process. And then thinking. Thinking is the ability which is the culmination of all these things put together. So attention, perception, memory, and ultimately it is used in the thought process. So it is the ability to, take in all the past knowledge you've accumulated and then use what is currently available or any new knowledge that is available to you, and then to rationalize or use it to plan, to make decisions, to to organize yourself, to look for more information to help improve your, for self improvement, or to increase your knowledge about that particular topic, etc., or to critically evaluate and either reject a particular information or to take on a particular information, etc. So thinking again, it is almost like the sum total product of all these processes put together. So now we are going to look at each of these processes. One is attention, different types of attention. One is called focused attention, that is being able to focus on a particular stimulus at a given time. So for example, if I'm been given an apple and I'm asked to explore it, I'm focusing only on the apple. I'm not, withering my or scattering my attention onto other things. Sustained attention. Sustained attention is taking the focused attention over a certain amount of time. So prolonging it for a certain period of time. And sustained attention is always necessary for greater learning to take place. And then there is selective attention. Selective attention is being able to attend to a specific stimulus, even if there are other distracting stimuli. So for example, if you're in a school situation, there's plenty of noise happening around you. In a large classroom, in a regular classroom setting, there are lots of, children are doing different things. Some children are writing, some may be standing up, the teacher may be talking. So many things might be going on, which could be distracting, but you've been given a certain task at hand. So probably you've been asked to write a composition or to draw a picture to illustrate your story. Being able to shut out these distracting stimuli and being able to selectively focus on what is necessary, what is required for that moment. That is called selective attention. Now, although these are different names given, many of them overlap. It is very, very difficult to kind of bifurcate or trifurcate these in a certain task or that you undertake. So therefore, when you plan activities also, you don't have to think of, okay, this, and this kind of attention. It is basically being able to attend to something, if necessary, for a longer period of time. Initially, when you work with kids, especially when they have attention issues, initially you may have to minimize the distractions, but slowly you can bring in back little bit of distractions to make sure that they are able to still attend with the distractions. So when you talk about attention, how I would like the participants to think about or suggest activities that can help improve attention in children. So I would really like people to be forthcoming. Please do suggest some activities to enhance attention in children.
So we have few response from our participants, ma'am. Vishwas saying using puzzles, beats, sorting activities, scooping, painting activities, using of attention grabbers, threading, beading, games, coloring, puzzles, sequencing, pegboards, movement activities, singing, drawing, pillar making.
Okay, thank you. That has been a very, very good list. And I can see it's coming from educators. So they've been very, very particular about the kind of things that they've suggested for increasing attention. So I'll just do a sum total of what are the strategies we need to go through. Okay, many of the things what you've said is the activities. Now, when you plan these activities, make sure there is proper eye contact. Maintain a considerable amount of eye contact. So for maintaining eye contact, sometimes you might have to get into the level of the children. If you're standing up and the child is sitting on a low table, that's not very good eye contact. So get down to the level of the child. So where both your eyes and the child's eyes are on par or at a same level. So that is one way of getting their attention. Give precise instructions and follow them. So yes, the activities were fine, but when you do those activities, the instructions that you give them should be very simple, precise, to the point. There shouldn't be any ambiguity. So when you say point to the word with your pointer finger, it should be that precise. You can't just say, okay, follow the word when you're reading. That can be probably done with much older kids. But when you're especially in the early stages, when you're teaching children, be very specific in the kind of instructions you're giving so that it is easier for them to follow. You can use a lot of your talking exercises, conversations, group discussions, any kind of oral activities that you undertake. You can talk about their favorite toy or their favorite TV program. You can even talk about the daily activities you do with the children. What did you have for breakfast? And then kind of elaborate on that. Play is a very, very important way of building attention, because most children do respond to play. Play is a very natural instinct in most children. Modeling tasks. So, copying and imitating, modeling and imitating different kinds of actions and tasks. Engage in activities which are of, where there is not always the same kind of repetitive activity. So try and vary the kind of activity so that the interest and the motivation is kept up. And when there is better motivation, and it will engage the child more actively. So that helps to build attention. And like you all said, do close-ended activities like puzzles, sorting, etc. Repeat what the child is saying or doing. So the child has told you something, repeat it and maybe try and expand upon what the child is saying. So again, so you show that the you are interested in what the child is doing or saying. Praise the child for paying attention. Very, very crucial, especially in children who have attention difficulties. Catch them being attentive and, give reinforcement for that. Teach time management skills. Put a timer or put a visual cue where, okay, when I clap or when I say 1, 2, 3, we start, and when I say 1, 2, 3 again, you stop. So give these kind of time duration boundaries, so that helps they know, okay, it is only for this much time that they have to focus. Provide breaks when necessary. And this is particularly true when you're planning activities for children who have very low attention. Shorter duration activities and with bigger breaks initially, and then you proceed to slowly increasing the duration of the task at hand and reducing the amount of the duration of breaks. Practicing mindfulness. Again, doing things like cross-lateral exercises or brain gym exercises, where crossing over the body parts in different kinds of fun exercises helps in the bilateral stimulation of the brain and therefore promotes better attention. Yoga, again, another area where mindfulness. Mindfulness basically means being conscious, being aware and conscious about what you're doing. So being in the moment, that is mindfulness. So again, that helps to practicing these kind of things promotes attention. There are some simple attention activities also that has been provided, like from a very simple activity like this, where if they know colors, then you can just ask them to, go through each line and cancel just the red color out. So, where they have to, go through everything and just, focus on the task that has been given to them. Here again, it is slightly more advanced compared to the earlier worksheet, where they have to match, they have to look through the patterns that is given in column A and column B, and then find the ones that perfectly match and go about matching it. Cancellation activities or visual scanning and cancellation is again something that is done. Give a array of letters. Sometimes this can also be done with words, especially if you're teaching certain words and reading, where take a target letter such as A and say every time A appears, cross it out. This can also be extended to other hands-on activities. You can mix a few kind of pulses together, or different kinds of lentils together, and ask them to just sort out one kind of lentil. So you can give, say, a red lentil, a yellow one, the green gram, and then ask them to just pick out the green ones out of it and sort it out. So any kind of sorting activities is good for attention. You can also use daily life activities for building attention. Self-care skills, bathing, buttoning, undressing, dressing, all this requires attention. So it is not just, tabletop activities or floor activities as we do in school or in the clinical setting, but our everyday life activities can also be used to further attention. Next, we come to perception, and especially when it comes to academic learning and inclusive schools, perception is for all senses, but predominantly visual and auditory perception is what is important for academic achievements and academic learning. So when we talk about perceptions, there are certain important skills that we talk about. One is discrimination. Discrimination means being able to identify and differentiate between different kinds of images, different kinds of pictures, words, letters, sounds, etc. Figure ground differentiation or figure ground discrimination. Figure ground means that it will be something in the background, but from that you have to identify one particular figure out. So this is like, you find some of these things where there are lots of bubbles given on a page, and there's a number written also in the form of bubbles, and they ask you to identify the number from that distracting background. Or you can be given, things like, say, a picture of a jungle in which there are a lot of animals which are not very prominent but are kind of hidden, and they have to find out those animals. So this is something called figure ground. It can be visual. It can also be auditory, because you can, from a given amount of sounds, you can ask them to locate a particular sound, where it is coming from, and so on. Closure. Closure means the tendency to fill in the gaps and to perceive something as a whole. So if half the picture is given, being able to figure out, okay, this is what the real picture is. So you might have seen in a lot of children's magazines or children's activity books, you'll find, say, half a butterfly or half an apple given, and they are asked to draw the other half. So this again is something that helps perception. What they do is, when seeing the one half, the brain is kind of trying to fill in the other half and trying to understand and derive meaning of what the thing is. So again, this is visual. This can also be auditory. Auditory is just by listening to a certain background music, being able to recognize what song it is. Again, it's trying to, or if you sing a song and some words are missing, you just beep some of the words. The children are able to fill in if they've kind of listened to the song before. Spatial awareness, being able to understand where the objects are in space, whether they are beside, next to you, behind you, in front of you. Same way with sound, being able to locate where the sound is coming from, being able to turn to it, go towards it, and so on. Analysis, the ability to break things into different components. That is, if you see a full picture, being able to dissect something and understand the different parts. For example, if you see a whole plant, being able to understand the different parts of the plant, the individual plants, the parts such as the roots, leaves, flower, etc. Synthesis, the opposite of analysis, that is being able to combine something as a whole. So even if you see individual roots, plants, different parts of the plants are seen, being able to put those together and to realize they are part of one whole plant. It is synthesis. So all these are important skills which form part of perceptual development. So when you work on activities, be conscious that you have to develop all these different kinds of perceptual skills. So again, once again, since you've known what is, I've given you an idea of what is perception, I would like the participants to suggest some activities to enhance perceptual skills.
So there's mentioning that finding the difference between two objects using craft, puzzles, shadow matching, fill in the blanks, drawing, touch hot and cold objects, paper folding, sorting, puzzles, a lot of puzzles. Yeah, joining the dots by numbers, origami, word search, tapping activities, memory games, travel in the train, I Spy, picture reading, brainstorming, puzzles, paper folding, smelling flowers, find the difference, word scramble, memory game, charades, hide and seek worksheets. Yes, these are the major ones.
Yeah, brilliant. So this shows that, people have actually been working with kids. It's very, the audience is really perceptive, I must say, has good perceptual skills, and they have really worked on these things with their kids. So that's definitely a very, very exhaustive list that has been suggested. So activities for visual perception, I'm just kind of pulling together whatever everybody has said. Hidden picture games, complete partially drawn pictures, dot to dot, jigsaw puzzles, memory games using picture cards, construction type activities, Legos with building blocks and such things, flashcard games, with reading words, word search, draw or make pictures using shapes, copy 3D or block designs, review work, or like do something like proofreading or editing work, make certain mistakes in the work that you present, whether it's a written material or whether it's a picture material or a visual, and then ask the children to identify mistakes in that. That is also, a good activity, especially in patterns, in color and shape patterns. Make a mistake in the pattern, present a pattern which has an error in it, ask the children to go through and find out the error in that. That kind of, again, it engages the student more actively and, aids in more sharper visual perceptual skills. Visual perception is much more easier. It is more easily identifiable. I'll also come into auditory perception, because I know this is an area which has received, even in research, it's an area that is much less researched as compared to visual perception. So what can we do to enhance activities for auditory perception? One is read stories, listen to music, songs, rhymes, and as I said earlier, skip or beep certain words or beep certain sounds, and then encourage them to complete it, or find the words that go with it. Or you can have open-ended songs where it's a rhyme and they have to keep on adding to the rhyme. Engage in talks, conversations, and group discussions. Listen and draw activities. So somebody is going to dictate to you, say, draw a straight line, from top to bottom, and then take the line to the from left to right, and so on, and then draw according to the auditory instructions given. So again, and end up with a certain figure. So listen, repeat, and add on. Like there are certain games called Chinese whispers, where you say something to your friend next to you, whisper, and that whisper has to be carried on, and then the last person in the circle has to say what they have heard. Or you can say something and then the second person has to repeat what the first person said and add on. So again, so as you move further down with the children, like a game, the last person will have lots of information to not only remember, but also to add on. Play hide and seek with auditory objects. So, it's like we play visual hide and seek, and you hide objects which have sounds in them. So like a timer or an alarm which is going off, hide it under some places, and they have to go and locate and look for the source of that object. Or keep a ringing bell, or have somebody do it, and they have to go and locate the source of the sound. Listen to the teacher with the background music on. Okay, this is again what I said earlier. Initially you start off with no distractions at all, then slowly try to bring in some soft music, soft background music while the teacher is explaining, so that the child learns to still attend to the teacher even with the background music, playing at a certain low volume, and then slowly you can increase it. Listen to music, just the music, and then identify what song it is. Or this kind of activities actually boost and help auditory perception. So this is one area where teachers need to really work intensively on, because we do a lot for visual perception, but we tend to kind of undermine auditory perception, and it is the combination or a healthy balance of both that actually contributes to learning in all kinds of learning, but particularly academic learning. Again, some of the sample activities which you've already mentioned, dot to dot, where they have, being provided a model, they have to copy the exact model. Here you find, they have to blank out or color a certain squares. So they have to produce an exact replica. Shadow picture matching. So many of these things which you've already said goes with visual and auditory perception, and many of these activities have to be incorporated while you're planning a learning, teaching learning activities. Then last we come to the culmination of all this. I'm not dealing much with memory, because that is going to be done in the following workshop. So today we are the culmination of what are the different kinds of thinking processes that take place because of attention, perception, as well as memory. Different kinds of thinking. One is concrete thinking. When we say concrete, just like the name signifies, it is about tangible objects. That is, things that you can directly touch, feel, you can see, hear, etc. So it is in thinking about facts or things which can be easily like in 3D or 2D, you can show them, or you can feel them, you can hear them, and understand about them. So that is concrete thinking. And most young children, they start off with concrete thinking, and then it slowly develops into abstract thinking. So early childhood is a lot about concrete thinking. And then as children grow older, we learn more and more about abstract level thinking. And abstract level thinking is about thinking about objects, facts, information, which are not physically present there. They are not tangible at that moment for us to feel. It may have been an earlier experience, or it may have been experience which we are visually or imagining. So it is there in the imagination, or we've just learned it from the different experiences we have had in the environment. So that thing may not be present there in front of you, but from you are able to visualize it in your thought process, and therefore that you're able to find solutions to it. So abstract thinking is so concrete and abstract. So higher level order of thinking is abstract thinking. Convergent thinking. Convergent thinking is when you think about logic. You have a problem. Say suppose you miss the bus while going somewhere. So, okay, so now logically what you would think is, okay, I have to reach this place on time. I'm already late if I miss the bus that I was supposed to catch. So what can I do? Probably I can take a cab so that I would not be late to this place. And then you can go about calling a cab. So that is, involving a certain kind of logic, a certain sequence logical thinking to deal with the problem that you have on hand. And that's called convergent thinking. There's also called something called divergent thinking, which is far more open. It involves a lot of creativity, imagination. So you might start off with one little idea, but then you try and create a lot of things about it. So again, sometimes we do this. You can give one particular shape to a child, and this is one activity which can actually promote this. So you give one particular shape, and then with that shape, ask them to create something new. They can add on more details and create something new. Or you can give certain situations, and divergent thinking is more open-ended, because then there are different solutions to that problem, or there are different ways in which it can be solved, because different people think differently, their imagination may be different ideas may come because of divergent thinking. Lateral thinking is where you use a combination of both. And a lot of times in our real life situation, sometimes if it is too much of divergent thinking, you may sometimes go totally off a tangent, and it may not be practical in a community living. A lot of convergent thinking also leaves no scope for new the ideas to come in. So quite often, especially when we are faced with life problems, lateral thinking is what is a lot used. We use logic, but at the same time, we also couple it up with, are there better ways of doing it? Is there any other solution to that particular problem? Okay, logic says I need to take a cab, and probably I'm trying to get a cab. But, is there any other way of doing it? Can I do something else? Or can I ask those people to, another way of asking is whether I can ask them to change the time schedule, so that I can catch the next bus and leave, if that is possible. So lateral thinking means it uses a combination of this, convergent and divergent thinking to arrive at a more practical solution, to be more pragmatic in everyday life. So I gave you a few examples already, but I would like the audience also to suggest some activities that can improve thinking in your children.
Puzzles using drama play, word search, solving word problems, maze puzzles, pretend play, role play, stories, story giving, story developing, cause and effect, crossword puzzles, answering the why questions, math games, problem solving, word search, role play, script writing, think, puzzle, solve, completed, sentence completion, singing songs, role play as per situation, social stories, word search, blogs, tic-tac-toe, sentence completion, vocabulary enrichment, creative works, Sudoku.
Okay, that's again a very exhaustive list. Thank you so much for putting in all those suggestions. Yes, but just to give a more a more concrete thing to whatever you put forth. You've suggested activities, so provide a lot of different activities for play. Children learn best through play, so provide different kinds of opportunities for different kinds of play situations. If there is a problem, say there is something going on in the playground, there's a fight breaking out, or children are getting into an argument, do not intervene immediately. Pause, wait, see what they're doing. So give them a chance to sort it out themselves, think about it themselves. If the situation is not being handled by them in an appropriate way, then you intervene. Giving a lot of open-ended activities or open-ended questions. Open-ended means there is no right or wrong answer, but the children can come up with different kinds of answers which may fit with the narrative. So for example, if you're like somebody already said, sentence completion, give half the sentence and the rest of the sentence starter can be given, and the rest of the sentences can be filled in by the student according to their vocabulary, according to their ideas, according to their creativity. Same with stories. You can start off a story, give just the beginning part, and then they can develop the story or take it through a completely different plane. Or you can have read a story from your lesson, and then ask the children to just change the ending part of the story. So how can the ending be changed? So us doing different kinds of things like this, which will trigger the thinking process in them. Why something is happening, how something is happening, what can be done for it. Should you do it? So all these, the question words that we talk about can also be used as part of the thinking to develop thinking processes. So help children, like I earlier talked about the plants experiment, get them to, before when they start on the experiment itself, ask them to predict what do you think is going to happen. And then after they've done the experiment and grown the plants, they can collect the data that they've collected, and then analyze, okay, was their prediction right or was their prediction wrong? And from that, make some infer that, okay, these are the things that they should do for the plants to grow better next time. So, being able to predict, being able to analyze the information and infer and learn something new, and therefore better their next course of action, all this promotes better thinking. So present those kind of activities and make children aware of those kind of things. Even before you get into a story, just by looking at the pictures, ask them to predict about what do you think the story is going to be. How do you think the characters are going to play out? Uh, present different kinds of life situation problems. Like I just gave an example of, okay, I have to go somewhere and reach some place at a particular time and I miss the bus. So present those problems and ask the children to find different solutions. A lot of things that happen on the playground, like a fight situation or a conflict situation, these can be presented as problems to the children, and what are different ways or more acceptable ways of dealing with it. Okay, so again, a lot of the violence that we see nowadays, or inappropriate ways that children deal with, fights or even dealing with stressful or anxiety-driven situations in life, not just children, even adults, present those kind of problems and see what are the different ways or different solutions and what can be the best solution at a particular point of time. So all these things can be part of life skill development, and they can all be used to trigger a good thinking processes in children. And this will ultimately have a very, very positive impact even in their academic development, because academic learning is not just about gathering in information and reproducing it in evaluations or assessments and exams. It is also about understanding that information, analyzing it, taking what is necessary, discarding what is not necessary, using, recalling it when it needs to be applied, when and how certain information needs to be applied. So all these things form the form the bulk of what comes out as academic performance. So all these things are actually necessary, and these kind of cognitive skill training has to be built into all the learning activities that you do. A lot of thinking activities can be triggered through a lot of questioning and predicting and inferring and analyzing. And that can be with anything from what you do in everyday life to even as simple as, turning on the hot water tap in your bucket, into your bucket if you're holding some water. If whether you should open the tap this much, how much of the cold water tap should you run so that the water is, in the bucket that you're holding is bearable enough. Even that can be used as a trigger the thinking process kind of situation. So any situation, even your daily life, what you think of as mundane situations, can be used to trigger a certain kind of thinking process in children. So use all the things that are available. You don't have to necessarily think of only the teaching material available in the classroom, but even your daily life situations can be used to trigger thinking processes in children. So you've already said, Sudoku, crossword puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, all these help problem solving. They do help in, better thinking process skills, give certain objects and ask different ways in how you can use them. Sometimes they can even be, come up with uh, quite bizarre kind of ways and ask them to demonstrate if they do say something. So again, that will show a bit of creativity in the children. So bringing out these kind of higher order skills is very important, and these can be done through different ways like this. So what do we do to facilitate cognitive skill development? Evaluate the child's level of development when you have to plan and teach suitable activities. So again, cognitive skills is not an individual area of development. It is very much intertwined with social skills, play skills, speech and language skills, motor skills, and so on. So you have to have a holistic view of what is the child's current level of functioning, and based on that you can take it to where and then plan activities accordingly. And as we said, cognitive development is a bigger cover for all the other skill development. So all that has to happen, has to be stimulated hand in hand so that it facilitates cognitive skill development. Focus on the process of learning rather than the end product of it. So one thing we tend to do as teachers, especially as we go into higher academic learning and more into reading, writing, doing math, etc., is we focus on the answers, the right answers or the wrong answers, rather than how to go about finding the answers. So, when you're teaching a child to say, make write a sentence, you're possibly assessing the child on, okay, whether the sentence is grammatically correct or whether the punctuation is right or whether this is right. But rather we need to focus on how to go about building a sentence. So the process of how to do something, if you're learning to do fill in the blanks, not just putting the word in the blank is not what is important. Rather, the process of how to try out the different words in the blank and see if it makes sense in the sentence. See, or if it doesn't make sense, how to eliminate that word and pick another word and try that out. That is the process, that is involved in doing fill in the blanks. So focus on the process of learning. The content, the end product will come automatically. When we have to facilitate cognitive skill development, be very aware that as educators, we should work on the learning process. The end product or the answers, the correct or wrong answers will come as a result of the process of learning. And then not always the outcomes may be right. Children may not always give the right answers. But if they've made the effort, if they've done if they've gone through the process of the process correctly, appreciate that, give some reinforcement for that. For example, if a child is learning to add using and has difficulties with addition, and you've taught the child how to use a number line to add. So suppose you've given an addition problem and the child has got the answer wrong, but still the child has made the effort and taken the number line out and done it on the number line, but still got the answer wrong. At least appreciate the effort that, okay, the child has chosen the right process that is necessary for him or her to arrive at the solution. The solution may not have been right, it's okay, but still the process was right, and maybe there were some glitches in the process which caused the answer to be wrong. So you can then appreciate the fact that the child used the number line, but probably the way the number line was used has to be corrected so as to get the desired outcome or the correct answer. So do focus on the process and appreciate the efforts taken in that direction by the child. Use, use interactive methods that will, promote student engagement. So, a lot of give and take, not a very passive learning, but more active learning, which is through inquiry-based learning, through hands-on activities, through projects. So which helps the child to discover, rediscover, construct new things, reconstruct something that they've already seen. So using a lot of interactive methods actually involves, engages the student more actively, which means both the attention is better developed, the perceptual processes, the thinking processes, all these are refined, and it undergoes transformation and becomes more and more fine-tuned. So use a lot of active learning methodologies and activities which will promote better cognitive skill development in children. Using multiple intelligence. Multiple intelligence is something that certain children have certain extra talents. So some may be very musically inclined, some may be very artistically inclined, and so on. So, if you find certain talents in those children, use that kind of talents to further the activities. You'll be using multisensorial, multimodality learning, because that again enhances comprehension, because the perception gets better when you use multisensory or multimodality. Give problem solving situations, and help develop and trigger their problem solving skills. Use different kinds of grouping, both group activities, individual activities, so that they can also think in isolation when they're doing individual activities, but also in group activities, they can learn from others' ideas and further improve their thinking or understanding of a topic and problem solving. So again, use a lot of these variety of student engagement activities, different kinds of grouping, different kinds of situation, multiple ways of presenting the material and arriving at solutions. All these together, facilitates good cognitive skill development. And the points to be remembered are: when activities are planned, they should enhance all these skills: attention, concentration, perceptual skills, promote logical thinking and reasoning, and improve memory or recall skills so that they can use and apply it in a given situation. So this is a wrap up of today's session. We touched upon 3 different aspects, cognitive processes which are involved in cognitive skill development, and particular focus was given on attention, perceptual skills. We also talked about thinking skills and problem solving skills, and different kinds of strategies, techniques, and activities to help children with special needs to improve attention and perception skills. So I come to an end. Thank you for this session, and now I'm open to question and answers.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for breaking all the components of cognition into parts and helping us understand them in detail in such easy ways. I'm sure the audience also had a lot to learn from you today. If you could stop sharing, ma'am, I'll share certain information with our participants, and then we'll start with the Q&A for today. Thank you so much. So, dear participants, as part of our module 5, which is focusing on academic intervention, we'll have another workshop, which is cognitive skills development part 2, where we'll be talking on the strategies and techniques to improve memory skills in children with special needs, which would be happening on the 9th of December and would be conducted by Dr. Grace. Followed by, we also have another event which would be conducted by Madam Geetha, Gopi, and which would focus on the milestones and prerequisites for English language development, which would happen on the 16th. The time for both the events is 4 p.m. Indian time, 5:30 p.m. Indonesian time, and 6:30 p.m. Singapore and Philippines time. The link for both the workshop is being shared right now in the chat box. Do check the link out and register yourself to book your slots today. And also don't forget to share the link with anyone who you think would benefit from this. Moving on, I'll now take you through our platform and how is that you can register for different events. All you have to do is log in with your Ability account credentials and click on any event that is of interest to you and click on register for this event button. Once that is done, you have certain provisions that you get along with registering for an event. You would be able to submit your questions to our expert, and the question that gets the most upvote would be the one that would be preferred by the expert speaker for answering during the session. And also, as part of each workshop that you attend, you would get exclusive resources that are being crafted by Ability team along with expert guidance, which will be given to you, which you can use with your children in different settings. The resource material for the current workshop is being shared right now in the chat box. Do check the links out and let us know how effective this resource has been for you by rating the resource and by sharing the resource with fellow friends who you think would benefit from them. And also, you would be able to find all the relevant events that is of interest to you in your relevant events section. Finally, All the events that you've attended as part of ability, you'll be able to find all of them in my event section. Now, not only that, for people who have been a resource creator and been creating and curating resource to help children with special needs, this is an opportunity for you. By becoming an ability resource creator, you would be able to create your profile, upload the resource that you have created or curated for children with special needs, receive feedback and ratings from our community member, and able to build your profile with it. You'll be able to share your resources with over 40,000 educators and parents in our community. Not only this, we also have Ability Inclusion Champion, a community initiative. By becoming an ability champion, you would be able to share free and amazing resources and tools with the community. You'd be able to run local online and offline support groups and spread initiatives to spread awareness about special needs, and also meet people and learn from each other. We have about 400 volunteers who have taken their first step to join Abilities Mission. If you're interested to become an ability inclusion champion or a resource creator, the link for registering for both of it is being shared right now in the chat box. Do indicate your interest and register yourself for the same. Now, ma'am, we are ready to take our questions and answers for today. Can we begin with the first question? Are you ready for it, ma'am?
Sure.
The first question is from Ms. Shaheen. So you mentioned in the research study about the component of genetic and environment playing a role in cognitive development. So this is on that line. Shaheen wants to know, what is the role of mother as well as pregnancy in cognitive development?
Can you just repeat the question again, please? The role of the mother in pregnancy?
The role of mother and pregnancy time for cognitive development, because a lot of times parents are informed that changes in the pregnancy can actually have an impact on the cognitive development and lead to deficits. If you can share more insights on those lines.
I'm not a biologist or a neurologist, but from whatever little information I know, usually it is said that, most of the MRI scans and such things show that almost from the 3rd to 5th week of gestation, either neurons or the neural cells start developing slowly. And many of these neurons and the ganglion, which are the neural, the things that transmit the neural information, which forms the basis of, the nervous system. The connection between the sensory, motor sense organs, the motor organs to the brain. All this actually starts off from the 3rd week of pregnancy usually, and it goes on, building up throughout pregnancy. And usually by the 9th week of pregnancy, it is said somewhat a small structure of the brain is formed. Of course, the more experiences that come by way of the child, the more the information and the imprints gather on into the brain and the nervous system. So this is basically the connection. So if there are any kind of anomalies during pregnancy, if the mother has undergone trauma, or if the mother is coming from a very disadvantaged background where right kind of nutrition is not given, or many of these kind of things do affect cognitive development of the child. Just like all other development would be affected, similarly cognitive development can also be affected. So therefore it is very important that even during pregnancy, like we pay attention to diet and nutrition and other things of the mother, exposure of the mother, the emotional makeup, the trauma, both the physical, emotional trauma, all these things should be minimized, and the mother should really be in a happy state, because that actually fosters a better child development. And better child development, as I said, cognitive area is not isolated. There are all the other systems that are developing at the same time. So it all goes hand in hand. So if there is one that is affected, definitely the other is also going to be impacted in some way or the other.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for clearing air on it and sharing your insights. I'm sure this will help a lot of young mothers who are planning for a baby and the importance of maintaining their health, both emotional as well as physical, to facilitate the holistic and the overall development of the child per se. Next, we have a question from Ms. Asha Vinay, who wants to know some children have lower maturity levels. So, is it related to cognitive development? If so, how is that we can help in developing their maturity levels?
I think what she means by maturity level is being able to probably give age appropriate responses to situations. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's probably what is maturity. Uh, yes, cognitive development definitely impacts. For example, if the child is 5 or 6 year old and but is functioning, say, at a 3 year old level, definitely that is what they will be displaying, even though the chronological age of the child may be 5 or 6 years old. So yes, cognitive skill training has to be provided for such children so as to bring up the maturity level. Now, this also depends on how much the child can be pulled up, also depends on what kind of challenges the child has, how early are you starting the intervention, and so on. If you are doing it with a very, very young child and you're starting training early on, there are greater chances of the child catching up or catching up as close as possible to chronological age level maturity. Also depending on if there are the child is does have certain disorders such as autism spectrum disorders or learning disability or intellectual disability and so on, and if these the severity of those conditions also has an impact on the maturity levels. And yes, maturity is basically, it's a culmination of understanding your world around you, being deriving sense out of it, which is your perceptual process, how you see the world around you, and then using that information to to think about it, using and recall that information to use it in your everyday life. So definitely all these processes are part of the ultimate learning process, which contribute to what we call maturity. So yes, it does have an impact, and that is why I said it is important that when we plan intervention, take the cognitive element also into account.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your insights on it. Next, we have a question from Miss Joanna. We spoke about the different types of attention, whether a focused attention, sustained attention. So she wants to know which of this attention would develop first. Is there any order or sequence to it? And as teachers and educators, what is the type of attention that we need to focus upon?
As I said, I think during my presentation, I did say that, these are more technical terms. It is very, very difficult in a given activity to say which is focus, which is even within a given task, at certain times, certain types of attention will be taking over. Okay, so there is no need to think in terms of which type of attention. Yes, focused attention starts off first, but then it goes to, it moves on to sustain. So when you say focused attention, you're trying to immediately say you are presented with an object. You're going to look at it. That is focused attention. But then if you're having to look at that object for, say, 1 minute or half a minute, that is sustained attention. No matter what task you take in life, even if you're doing something like a self-care activity, like bathing skills or brushing skills, grooming skills, or you're taking up any activity, any academic level activity, or even play activities, focused attention is just the start. Focused attention is more like your attention is aroused towards that particular object or towards that particular situation. But then it is sustenance what makes it matter. If you're just aroused momentarily and it's gone, it doesn't serve any purpose. So every attention has it. There's no real sequence. It starts off with focus, but it has to proceed to all the others. So there are no stages as such when you plan an activity. When you plan an activity, yes, when you're motivating them, you're working on the focused, but just staying there doesn't help. It has to proceed to sustained attention. And this is why I said there is, as educators, this is nice to understand at the back of our mind. Okay, there are these 3 different kinds, or even if you look for more kinds of attention, there's even more kinds. This was the basic 3 I talked about. There are even more kinds of attention if you go deeper and deeper into the topic. But what is important is for us to realize how does it, how does it impact when we are planning activities. So when we are planning activities, basic thing is, the first thing is to get their focus. We need to plan on something that will engage them or catch their attention quickly so that they'll be aroused. And then to sustain it, it has to be interesting enough, for the children to keep attending to it for whatever length of time. And then, of course, the third one, which is like, you're selecting out of distraction, that's a much higher order. But again, that, even though we say higher order, even as a baby, if you take a child to a big social function where there's a lot of gathering, the child will still learn to recognize the mother's voice, or, look towards the father or the mother when called and all that. So, even in our daily life situations, all these three attentions are having its place depending upon the situation and depending upon what you do. So sustained attention is definitely necessary, as also selective, and focused is, its impact is that you're able to arouse the attention to whatever you want the child to to focus on.
So it actually goes hand in hand. There's no clear specification and demarcation.
This is more, as I said, it's very much pretty technical, just to understand there are different kinds of, attention processes. And there are even more. Learning is not so simple. This is the basic three that I talked about.
Okay, ma'am. So now we have certain questions on what are some of the challenges that teachers and educators are facing while sustaining or maintaining attention of children. So let's try answer some of the questions on those lines. First question is from Ms. Nanseem Ahmed, who wants to know how to sustain attention of children for repetitive and monotonous tasks. Because when the tasks become very repetitive in nature, they tend to get distracted and they're not interested to do something on those lines. So if based on your experience, if you could share some insights on what has worked for you, it'll help all our educators, ma'am.
Yeah. First of all, we need to understand whether those repetitive and monotonous tasks are necessary. Okay, so not everybody, again, every child is different. Some children feel comfortable and they enjoy repetitive and monotonous tasks. Whereas children, if you look at children who have, say, ADHD, for example, for them, repetitive, monotonous tasks are just killing. So they just do not respond well to it. They need variety and, different kinds of tasks given to them, different time duration as well, to keep their interest and motivation up. So it depends on child to child. Every child is different, so you cannot kind of generalize. And you also have to think of whether those monotonous, repetitive tasks are necessary for the child. If what you're aiming at is the child should remember, say you're teaching a particular skill. Say you're teaching the child to read a particular word. This is your target word. And you want the child to remember it. The child keeps forgetting, so you want the child to remember it. And this is probably why you're repeating that word over and over again, or making him write, or making him read, or whatever. This can be done in different ways. So, you have to kind of draw a fine line between whether you're trying to achieve the object of the child learning and remembering that concept. Is that why you're using the repetitive, monotonous tasks? Or what is the purpose of that? So the purpose determines whether you want the child to do repetitive, monotonous tasks. Practice, extra practice, repetitive practice does not mean doing it in the same way. And with young children, with most young children, they do not like monotonous repetitiveness. So, if you have to keep their interest, if you have to keep their motivation up, their attention sustained, then you have to vary the task. As they grow older, yes, as most of us grow older, we do tend to, develop more of that, sustaining on repetitive tasks. And that is something to be developed over time. So it doesn't happen, at a very early age. Over time, that is developed. Having said that, there are certain children, like some of the children on the autism spectrum, they like those repetitive tasks because they feel comfortable with it. They tend to like to do the same kind of task over and over again. In fact, they get disturbed when new kind of tasks are introduced. So again, you have to look at why you're doing those tasks, what is the purpose, and then see whether that has to be done. If those repetitive tasks are absolutely necessary to be done in the exact same manner, then you have to think of behavior management, shaping those behavior through reward systems or reinforcements, point systems, something to encourage them to keep at it for an X amount of time. I mean, there are children who, for example, if you're, especially in the vocational setup, if there are children with intellectual disability and they're being trained in certain kind of vocational, where there is one particular small task to be done, but the same task has to be done repetitively. And you want to increase the amount of tasks. For example, say they're packing 10 candies into a, into a bag. So if that is the repetitive task that needs to be done and they have to sustain it for an X amount of time, then slowly you start with smaller targets. So say if your target is 20 bags in an hour, you start off with 3 bags and then slowly increase the target and then bring it to the required length, if that is necessary. But again, a lot of the activities which children are taught for extra practice and better remembrance, for that, if you're using repetitive monotonous tasks, there are different ways of doing it. It's not necessary to do it through monotonous repetitive tasks.
Very beautifully put, ma'am. Understanding the nature and the purpose of what is to be done and making it more presentable to the child is the way to go about it. Next, we have a question from Ludras, Angela, and multiple others who wants to know how is that we can build attention for children when they have low eye contact or when they are not interested in an activity that is presented to them. In such situations, what can be done to build or sustain their attention?
Yeah. Low eye contact, normally we see low eye contact in children who have who are on the autism spectrum, and a big reason why they have low eye contact is because they find that very disturbing. Because that visual contact, that visual stimulation is a bit of overload for them to bear for, say, what we consider the normal length of time. Now, having said that, we cannot totally bring them out of the no eye contact situation, but we also have to do activities which develop some amount of eye contact. What we find is in such children, many of them have difficulty with people-to-people eye contact, but if it is through objects, that is better. They have, such children usually tend to have more difficulty with people eye contact. Looking at people's eyes and, like talking to them or looking at a person's eyes while speaking and so on. So what you do is, again, you start small. You cannot avoid that totally because even for development of communicative skills, social interaction, eye contact is very necessary. So you start off with small things. What we usually do is maybe an initial, just like saying a goodbye or a good morning. Okay, eye contact is elicited, and elicitation is again come down to the level of the child. So if the child is really small and short, bring your eye contact level to the child's eye contact level. Sometimes I even hold the child gently to let them look at me. And at times, when the child is not looking at what is intended, sometimes I even hold a little thing. If they're looking away, kind of directing it to where it is. You can also use, if you're using objects, you can also use sound or texture or bright colors to attract the child to that, so that eye contact is maintained. So all these are different little tips on how you can increase it. You also have to realize, especially with children who are on the spectrum, when you work on eye contact also, it can only be increased incrementally. So initially you may do it for a little time and then give the child some rest. Let the child look away for some time. I do that during my intervention sessions. If I've done one little activity where the child has to focus, and say do threading beads, after that the child is too exhausted to look again, and the child will be looking elsewhere, will not focus. So then I give the child an opportunity to go and stand. This particular child loves to go to the window and look at the greenery outside. So I let him do that. That calms the child down, and then he comes back and he's ready for another session, another activity. So again, incrementally increasing eye contact is what is necessary when they have very poor eye contact. It cannot happen all of a sudden. And we have to realize why such children are not giving direct eye contact. So respect that also. Because of the nature of their condition, there's a lot of sensory overload, which they have to, it's like us. I mean, if we are in a noisy traffic all day long, what do you want to do when you come home? You just don't want to hear anything, right? You just want some amount of quiet and silence. So imagine children who are on the spectrum, they are actually having a lot of the sensory overload. What we see as just a normal light, they may be seeing as very highly blinding, illuminating light. So therefore, they need to look away and shut that down for some time to calm themselves down. So understand that. And while eye contact has to be worked on, also understand the need that they need to look away. There are times when they need to look away. And in some of the very high functioning autistic, individuals also, who are able to even articulate well how and have reached great heights. Even there are several of those people also who still don't maintain very good eye contact when they speak, but they still speak well. And with some of these children also, the screen is a good help. A lot of times with children on the spectrum, when COVID happened and we had to switch to online classes, we found they were more attentive because they didn't have the disturbance. They weren't as disturbed looking at the teacher through the screen rather than looking at the teacher directly. So they found, and some of them were articulate enough to say, let's continue with online classes. So again, you have to understand why they are doing this, if there is a diagnosis, and why, if that can be helped. Again, understand that it cannot be helped to the maximum. Help it to the maximum extent possible, but do understand that if they do have, if they're on the spectrum or if they have sensory issues, they may need to look away at times. And that's okay. Just accept them for what they are and improve as much to the extent possible, but understand they need a break also.
Very, very informative, ma'am. Next, we have a question from Ms. Farida Kashum, who wants to know, as humans, our mind actually keeps changing from one thought to another thought, and it's actually multi-directional and keeps focusing on different things. So with this mind, how is that we'll be able to maintain sustained attention? If it is this difficult for us as adults, how is it for children? If you could share some insights on this, that would be really helpful to our participants.
Yeah, this is what I said when I talked about practicing mindfulness. It is not just for children, it is for us adults also. If we actually, eat the right kind of diet, do the right kind of exercise, practice things, as I said, cross-lateral or exercises. Cross-lateral means bringing one side of the body, either the legs, hand, or shoulders, whatever. Bringing the left side, crossing over the midline and moving to the right side. So any exercises which promote that. And the other way around, bringing the left onto the right side. So, when you do aerobics, for example, when you do brain gym exercises, when you do yoga, all these things are, these cross-lateral stimulation is happening. And then also being in the moment. So when you are actually going through the steps of, say, yoga or an brain gym or an aerobics, they're actually telling you, they tell you, okay, if you're doing this exercise, target on the muscles that your core muscles or your stomach muscles. If you're doing this particular exercise, you focus on your hand muscles. So drawing your attention, taking your attention into that area. It is actually a kind of training. So being in the moment, even when you're cooking or you're doing your daily household chores, even if you're putting things you're putting things away. And there is I mean, I can speak from personal example. My memory is really bad, and so I had to always keep writing notes and things like that. And with age, it gets even worse. So there was a time when I was really pathetic, and I couldn't remember. I would keep things safely somewhere, and I just had no clue where I'd put it. So now what I'm doing is, consciously I say to myself, okay, this is what I'm doing. And when I'm doing that one particular activity, I'm not thinking of other things. So learn to, to deliberately shut. So if you're cooking, don't try to multitask. A lot of times what we end up doing is doing too much of multitasking. And therefore, our attention gets divided, and no activity gets its proper due attention. And therefore, we find it difficult to be integrated. The key to integration is being in the moment and focusing more on the task at hand. So I'm not a big advocate of multitasking. I know it is okay, and we are able to do it when you're younger. But as you age, very consciously, you have to move away from multitasking into what is more like sequential or mind mapping, and try as much as possible not to do too many things at one time. It is important to practice that, because as we age, particularly, we find that, and even a lot of studies have happened in the multitasking area nowadays to show that multitasking actually doesn't, it makes individuals more hyperactive, or, their sustained attention gets affected, and so on. So therefore, you have to targetedly do things such as exercising, or such as practicing. Even saying what you're doing as you're doing it helps you to keep yourself rooted to that particular task. So, which is why, when we start teaching reading, for example, we tell the child, don't just look and read silently. Read loud. And then when you come into a higher order, you can read silently. So why are we reading aloud? It's not just for the auditory input or anything, but to be in the moment so that you're not distracted into other things. So being in the moment is very important, and that has to be practiced, and not just for children, even for us, even throughout life. And as I said, as you age, even more so. So get into all these things. A lot of even activities such as dance, especially classical dances, music, learning vocal music, all this helps, because again, all these helps you to keep rooted to the task at hand while ignoring the other things. Artistic expressions. The participants were talking about drama and role play. When you're doing role play, your mind will not waver elsewhere, right? You're in the role, you're doing the play. So again, all these different, that is why I always advocate, fine arts, performing arts, sports. Sports is again something which requires you to be in the moment. If you're thinking of other things, you can't play the game. So all these things actually, contribute so much towards being mindful and, improving your cognitive processes, which is why I said, use a lot of these kind of activities when you're planning your learning teaching activities, because they may not appear to be academic, but they do have its positive impact, not just on academics, even your everyday life skills.
Very, very practical suggestions, ma'am. Pace it and place it in right categories for you to build sustained attention. It's a skill, but that is built through practice. Next, we have a question from Miss Felicia, who wants to know, from what age can we expect children to pay attention to you or to something that's being said? And how is that we can measure the attention level? Is there a way to measure the attention level of children?
Attention, when the baby is born, after a few days itself, the child starts looking at the mother's face. That's the start of attention. Probably by the end of the first 1.5 months, the child starts looking at the mother or at familiar persons and starts giving a smile. If you smile, they smile back at you, especially at familiar people. That is nothing but, it's an extension of the attention. So that happens. We are almost inbuilt with certain devices to develop these things. In fact, some of our experiments also, this neurological and prenatal experiments and research has also shown that there's a considerable amount of learning that takes place, cognitive processing that takes place even within the gestation period, while the child is in the womb of the mother. They say, like, if you play classical music while the mother is pregnant, it has a positive impact. And the fetus is shown to respond. I mean, there have been experiments which measure these kind of things, like how does the fetus respond when there is loud jarring music or when there is soft classical instrumental music being performed and so on. So, all these processes, as I said, it's starting right from when from inception. It's from the time the embryo starts growing in the womb of the mother. But it is further, from when the child is born. Yes, it is more predominant, and that's where we have more control over, so we can change the environments and activities to promote better cognitive skill development. Can I get the second part of the question, please?
So is there any ways to measure the attention level?
Measuring attention, researchers definitely, they have their thing about, they actually keep timers and, measure how long a child is sitting. Being in the clinical situation, what I normally do is when a child comes to us and we are doing the different special ed assessments and all the learning process assessments, we give an activity such as a writing activity, or if it's a very young child, give a play activity, and roughly kind of, keep a stopwatch and measure how long the child is able to sit or do that particular activity. So it gives, again, it may vary with activities. So sometimes if a child is really interested in a particular toy or a particular activity you've given, they may sit at it for a longer amount of time. So give different kinds of activities, and then, you probably have and record the amount of time that they are able to sit and focus on those activities, which will also give you an insight about what activities will work with the child when you're planning the intervention program. So if it's a child who loves, say, pictures, visual, books and such things, many of your activities can be used, many of your skills can be furthered using, say, picture books and such things. If a child doesn't like books, but instead likes, hands-on toys or blocks or those kind of activities, and the attention is greater in those activities, then definitely that gives you an indication even for planning your intervention, that probably this child will learn more through those methods. So again, take an average. You don't literally have to measure exact to the second, but you can have a rough idea with a stopwatch, about how long is a child able to focus on an activity. And we do that. We give different kinds of activities depending on the age of the child and see how long the child is able to focus. And usually we take an average also, this is the average time, but in certain types of activities, the attention may be longer. In certain times it may be shorter. So, you can use the longer kind of activities to boost your intervention goals, but at the same time target this low attention ones also to bring that higher up.
Lovely insights, ma'am. A lot to learn from you and your discussion today. Let me take the last question for today as we're running short of time. The last question is from Ms. Dorothy, who wants to know, for all the activities that we have discussed today, especially of matching, shadow matching and things like that, is that okay? In order to build the attention of the child, can we use a stopwatch? And if you're using a stopwatch, how is that we can let the child know that the time set for the child is completed? If you can share insights on this, this will be helpful.
There are timers nowadays which are available, which have like a shaded thing. So it starts, you can show the child this is where it starts, and then when it ends, this is where it is going to end. And you can shade that part, like in a yellow or a red. So when the red part is getting over, that means the time is over. So you can give these kind of indications. I have also worked with, timers such as, I usually give a start timer, and say if I planned an activity for 10 minutes and that is the duration, before the 10 minutes is completed. When it goes halfway through, 5 minutes, I give again a bell saying, okay, halfway time is through. And then maybe 3/4 of the way through, I would say, okay, 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes over. And just before the 10-minute expires, maybe a minute or two before, I would say just 1 minute to go or 2 minutes to go. So giving an idea about how the time is, that can help. You can also, I've seen teachers use, something like little hourglasses. Instead of 1 hour, you get these, you can buy them for 2-minute, 10-minute hourglasses kind of thing, where, you can start the timer, the sand is at the top, and by the time it trickles down to the bottom, the child can actually visually see the sand trickling down. So when it completely trickles down to the bottom, time is up. So you can do things like this. What I do normally in a classroom situation particularly, I give a set time. And as I said, I give a half time indicator, I give a 3/4 time indicator. And towards the end, if it's the last 1 minute or last half minute, I say, okay, to the count of 10, and then you are done. So, I just start counting to the count of 10. Everybody needs to stop and put away your books or whatever it is I'm asking them to do. So I just give a countdown, basically. So these are little things that can help.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for an amazing session, for breaking the components of attention and perception in such ways for us and making it very, very simplified and practical for us to use in our respective settings. We had a lot of insights to take away from your session today. I'm sure the audience do too. I would like to ask you your final words to share with our participants today.
As usual, I've said that Ability, you have a wonderful community. So I really like the kind of, the participants are the audience I'm speaking to. They come up with wonderful suggestions, and, in our discussion part of it, very relevant questions are asked, which I hope I'm giving answers to the best of my ability, and it is satisfying the participants. So thank you for this opportunity. As always, lovely to be associated with the Ability community, both the panel, the team that organizes this, as well as the participants who participate.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you, dear participants. I've seen that the feedback link has been shared with you all already. I request my team member to again drop in the feedback link. Do let us know how effective this session was for you so that we'll be able to improve the experience with all of you all. And finally, I would like to let you all know that we have an upcoming session which is focusing on the developing cognitive skills part 2, where would be exclusively focusing on memory skills, which should be happening on the 9th of December by Dr. Mary Grace Gomez, followed by we'll have another session on milestones and prerequisite for English language development by Madam Geetha Gopi, and on the 16th of December, both of it would be happening 4 p.m. Indian time, 5:30 p.m. Indonesian time, and 6:30 p.m. Singapore or Philippines time. Do book your slot and register yourself for the event because we have very, very limited slots. And also I would like to reiterate to all the participants that the resources, the recording and the PPT of the current workshop will all be provided to you. Do keep an eye on your emails. Until we meet you for the next time, it's a big bye from Team Ability. Stay safe. Take care, all of you.